I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to keep moving. And as we keep moving, I want you to be reflective about what it is that we're sharing. How does this have value for you? And if you have that instinct of, I already covered this, I know this, that's wonderful. I want you to lean into that and say, how am I embodying this? How am I growing with this? How am I challenging myself with this information? Because in this era of information overload, it's often that maybe it's hard to know exactly what everybody knows. We have our information silos, we have our misinformation bubbles. So as we embark in this journey together, whether you're treating this as a podcast or you're able to engage as we experiment with breakout rooms or not, like just lean into the feelings that you're feeling and lean into how this can inform your action. And then before we get started, I do want to take a moment to share with you some practice,
Sure.
a practice of grounding in what's at stake here. I want to start us off with the practice of a breath. I want to honor what we've been living through. I want to name and call into the room
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
the loss that we've had. I want to name Lorenzo Salgado Arujo, who was murdered by ICE in Houston, Texas on July 7th. I want to bring into the room Tyrion Johnson, murdered by the National Guard in Memphis, Tennessee on July 5th. And I want to bring into the room Johann Sebastian, murdered by ICE in Bedford, Maine on July 13th. And as I feel sadness, rage, and chills, I want to breathe in the fact that we recognize and honor the humanity of these victims. So I want you to breathe in, fill your lungs, and exhale. We're going to do this 2 more times. I want you to breathe in the solidarity in this room. I want you to hold and exhale. We're going to do it 1 more time. I want you to fill your lungs with your own humanity. And I want you to exhale loudly. For some of us, it might feel like it's too much to bring this in. I want to challenge you that we can bear witness to the moment that we're in, to the history, the moment in history that we are called to walk in. This is our reality today. We are losing our democracy, but we are also fighting back. And I want to honor the fact that you choosing to be here and being indivisibles is part of fighting back. And it is part of honoring the injustice by choosing to not look away and also choosing to look inside and choosing to grow in your resilience and in your capacity. So that is the point of our time together. We are here to grow in our resilience and our capacity to learn more about leading with solidarity, leading our outreach where we center the most impacted. And so if you have a pen and paper handy, I encourage you to go analog. As we are walking through this information, write down what resonates with you. Write down what you hate. Think about how we want to chew on this together. And forgive me if I'm a little slow in getting my technology ducks in a row. And I appreciate your patience as we move forward together. So here at the Solidarity Organizing Initiative, we were born out of the collective leadership of immigrant rights organizations after 47 was elected. these leaders of immigrant rights organizations got together and said, we're going to have an onslaught of people looking to us to say, what do we do? And the Solidarity Organizing Initiative is about leading with a bold response to authoritarianism, organizing communities in parallel in companionship with the indivisible model. We're about being grounded with love and freedom. We are about being led by everyday courage and naming where it is. It takes courage to lean into discomfort. It takes courage to decide to do something different with your time. It takes courage to make mistakes and learn from them. And so in our time together, we're going to do what I have donned an ice melter instead of an icebreaker, because it's a process. We want to connect to one another. So the ice melter is going to be about y'all grouping together. So we're going to put you in breakout rooms, and you may choose to participate or you may not. It's okay to stay in the main room here. But we're going to do maybe 3 or 4 people per room, and we're going to have an ice melter question. And we're going to do that for about 5 minutes. So here we're going to practice how quickly we can introduce ourselves, share a little bit, and make space for each other. Then we're going to talk about the context of today. And then we're going to talk about community-centered outreach design. What are the elements? How do we do that? We're going to talk about strategic and accountable allyship. And that kind of all bleeds into trust and relationship building, as well as valued-centered leadership. And then we're going to close out with me begging you to sign the Solidarity Pledge and begging you to fill out the feedback form, because that's how I know that I'm delivering on what I've committed to do in this movement. So I hope that we're able to get through all that in the time allotted. So let's dig in. Group agreements, how we show up in this space. I want you to stay human. I named a lot about emotion because our ability to stay enraged, disgusted, appalled, and forgive me for not knowing more synonyms and acronyms around our emotions. Our ability to feel those things and move through them, especially in community, is our connection to our human dignity. And the more connected we are to our own, the more we're able to see it in each other. And part of the strategy of this authoritarian regime is to numb us, is to shut that down. Tell me, what is it like to bear witness to a genocide on your phone? Tell me, what is it like to wake up and know another person was murdered on the street by another secret police? And at the same time, what does it feel like to know that you're in a room with over 80 people that are saying, I'm not okay with that? What does it feel like to march in the streets with over 8 million people across the country, from small towns to big cities, saying no kings in this country? So we need to be in the resiliency of feeling the full breadth of our emotions so that we can move through them and use them as the fuel that they are to make change in our neighborhood, to apply for that grant. So stay human is a call for us. It's a strategy for us. It's part of our resiliency, as well as gratitude and grace. Part of the authoritarian regime strategy is wearing us down. And when you're worn down by the polycrises that we're living through, you are prone to irritability. Those stupid emojis. Eh? Well, you are prone to suspicion. I don't know. Maybe that person's a psyop. Maybe that person's a double agent. And I don't know. There's a balance to that. You do have to ask that question from a place of soberness, though, right? So gratitude and grace, if you already have that as part of your faith practice, as part of your philosophy, that's wonderful. If you don't, I invite you to have it as part of your practice of pushing against our cognitive biases. We are prone to be suspicious and short-tempered and angrier. So by choosing to be grateful, I'm so grateful to Kimberly. I'm so grateful to Indivisible. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you choosing to be here this evening and to mean it and embody it. I feel so good thinking about that. And grace is, I'm not going to be perfect at this. We're not going to be perfect at this. You'll show it up because you want to learn about how to do it a little bit better, right? How do we do outreach that's culturally sensitive, that's aware? And so you have to give yourself grace because you have to be willing to stretch out of your comfort zone and give yourself grace for when you mess up. And if there's any misspellings in this deck, please give me grace, but also tell me what's wrong with it. There's an evaluation form. And finally, lean into discomfort. Part of what we're living through and the society that's kind of racing here is about convenience. Order that Amazon package. Talk to people who look and think like you. Right? That's all convenient. And there's a reason for that. So leaning into discomfort is like going to the gym, which I haven't done yet, but we're not going to make this about me. It is about going to the gym and building that muscle of our movement. And if you as an individual lean into discomfort, then us as a movement will be stronger. And so this is why our agreements, and I hope you take these agreements to your spaces and use them. And we'll share this deck with you as well. Talk about these things. We are each other's bond. And so sharing these and talking about them and struggling through them and reflecting on them is part of our work. So now to the ice melter. So we'll do breakout rooms of 3 or 4 people. It's going to be short, about 5 minutes. I want you to go ahead and share your name and your pronoun. And what is one thing that your neighbor or friend has done that has made you feel like you belong? Welcome back. Welcome back. Oh, that was 5 minutes. Welcome back. Welcome back. Sorry about the freeze. I hope you extended some grace to me, or maybe you felt enraged. I had a little bit of both. So welcome back. Welcome back. I'd love to hear a little bit about, if you want to throw it in the chat, how do you feel after talking to one another? What is resonating? What is bubbling up for you? What are you feeling? How did that feel?
Among these groups?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, okay.
Encouraged, empowered. You're talking to people across the country. Right? This feeling, and I apologize, I did see that there may be, you felt important. People like to be asked, nice to connect, optimistic, so lovely to meet people across the country. Another facet of this work is building community, and you have the power to build community within seconds. You have the power to reject the notion that we're strangers. So we always open with this practice of connecting with one another. And my apologies if the technology did not serve some of you, but connecting one another, this feeling that you have, I want you to remember it. As we embody it, I want you to remember it. As you're consuming the news, as you're struggling through a community meeting, as you're trying something new, remember this feeling of community. And so I'm going to move us forward because I want you to continue in reflecting on these things and also moving through them. And some of you may already be familiar with this framework. This is the 3 Earths framework, and I'll be sure to include a link to a reading on this. But as we think about what we're living through, I want you to think about Earth 1, Earth 2, and Earth 3. Earth 1 is what some people may have described back when Obama had a tan suit and people were having a meltdown. Like, oh my God, look at what he's wearing. Or maybe it's that terrorist fist bump that you remember. There's a big swath of this country that may think of that as Earth 1. Now, some folks in my community, the immigrant rights community, may be like, well, you're talking about the deporter in chief. I don't know if that's necessarily Earth 1, but right, that things are complicated. But there's this notion of what our democracy was, of what we had assumed was the social contract and the hard fought rights that were being respected for a good swath of this country. Oh going to say mostly the white folks, socially mobile folks, socially economically mobile folks, right? And then I want you to think about Earth 2. And here we have this image of a New Yorker when there was a raid called on Canal Street, which is a known under the table cellar place. This government sent in tanks as they kidnapped everyday people, what I like to consider young entrepreneurs. And this woman in her polka dot dress and her purse went in front of the tank and gave them the birds. Now, I don't think she went to a training to say this is how you stand up in front of a tank and this is how you give the government the bird. But that's the Earth we're in now. And I want you to think about Earth 3. Earth 3 is the one that we're fighting for. Earth 3 is the true democracy. And when I think about Earth 3, when I'm asked about like, what do I envision for Earth 3? I was like, oh man, free healthcare sounds great. And then I had a comrade, a fellow organizer say, how about you actually don't need healthcare because our food system doesn't make you sick. Because you're not so stressed that you have a migraine that you can't explain. And I don't have the capacity to imagine that, but I'm so grateful that I hang out with people who do. And now I was offered that. Our ability to stay connected to what it is that we're fighting for, what we want to build, is part of our resiliency. It's part of what we need to hold on to and ground and spend time thinking about. The why. And so this framework is to help us understand. It's a tool. Maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. Earth 2 now is authoritarianism, it's fascism. Earth 3 is something better that you define, that you and your indivisible collective defines. And Earth 1 is the democracy in quotes. It's the democracy where we normalized and accepted that Black people were murdered on the street on the regular, that our trans siblings had an astronomical suicide rate, that if you're suffering a mental health episode in this country and they call the cops, you're 12 times more likely to die. Right? That's the democracy in quotes. That's the tan suit time. So our ability to understand what it is that we're mourning, this Earth 1, how things were before the pedophile president, then we're not learning what we need to learn so that we can build something better. So I hope that this framework is something that you can use. And if not, please put it in the evaluation. Useless. And we'll take it, right? But I found this incredibly empowering to think about, especially with another organizer, this 3 Earth framework about authoritarianism and how we're fighting now, especially now that I have to talk to my Trump-loving brother, is that it's worth having a conversation with my brother about authoritarianism and fascism, about the actions that we need to do now, about how important it is to vote, about how I'm willing to contribute my time and my emotional bandwidth. And this is just me. I'm not telling you that this is what you got to do. But this framework helped me understand and helped me think about, I'm willing to have that conversation with my brother because it's important and it falls under what I feel is my responsibility. But my brother's not the person that I'm going to have a conversation about what it is that's something better that I'm going to build. The 3 Earths framework also helps us understand that the people that we need to bring into the fold aren't necessarily the people that you're going to build something better with. And that doesn't have to resonate with everyone. But I hope that it resonates with some of you that are on the edge about as to the why we need to bring in to the big tent, maybe somebody who loves guns and believes in due process, but doesn't like immigrants. The nuance, the complexity that the fight in front of us requires. This framework helps me understand in a deeper way. So I hope that does that for you as well. And again, if not, put it in the evaluation. So this is one tool. And so one thing that I think may have attracted you to this webinar, to this web, to this meeting, to the Zoom, is thinking about how do I do things more culturally aware? How do I do things in a way that bridges difference? I think I want us to look at this video. I hope I'm sharing sound. Am I sharing sound? Yes. Okay, good.
You are.
I'm going to play a video for you, and there's some thinking questions I have. And the questions are, how is what you're watching an example of people being community-centered? And how is this an example of people not being community-centered?
Remember when NASA sent a woman to space for only 6 days and they gave her 100 tampons, 100 tampons, and asked, will that be enough? 'Cause they didn't know if that was enough. These are our nation's greatest minds. They are literally rocket scientists. 100 tampons, 100 tampons. I can picture it now. Come with me. I'm Sally Ride and I'm going to space for the first time. I'm walking tall. I feel so proud. Then I see a man running past.
All right, it gets a little cut off, but how is this community-centered? And how is this not community-centered? Go ahead and throw it in the chat. I know it feels a little different, but you got to have a variety of tones here. At least they wanted to be prepared. I'm going to take that comment as filing under how it's community-centered. They're asking, hey, what do you need? The men were in charge, so it's not community. Maybe. If it's exclusively men in charge, that's not community-centered. They assumed what she needed. How little we know about each other. A woman would have known. At least they thought about tampons. Sally Ride was white, so I'm lost. Yeah, that's also kind of the point. So the point about being culturally responsible or aware, I mean, I forget which is the most popular DEI term here. Like, are you aware of your whiteness? Are you centering the most marginalized? But it's like, how are we being inclusive? And so here is a failed attempt at being inclusive. Like, I know you need tampons, but I didn't bother asking or thinking or researching how it works. It's both. Here are some elements of how it is community-centered because they're considering her needs. Here are some elements of how it's not community-centered because it's so indicative of how ignorant they are about how the female physiology. And you're going to tell me scientists and engineers don't know how to research things? So here we're seeing an indication of not enough care. There's a gap. And it's not just about race, it's about class, it's about gender identity. So this is why I wanted to bring in this particular example. Because it's not as if we simplify things too much. Well, you're not being community-centered because you didn't bring sign language people. It's like, well, maybe I did think about it. Maybe we asked. Maybe we didn't, right? Like it's having that space for here are some ways in which it is community-centered what we're doing, and here's how we're falling short. Our practice about being community-centered and community-led and building bridges across difference is our ability to have yes and thinking. Is our ability to think of the list of like, here's how I'm sort of meeting the goal, and here's how I'm here's my blind spot. Here's how I'm learning about it. So I hope you get a kick out of this example because you have to bring joy into what you're doing, into your analysis, into your self-criticism. You have to be able to laugh it off in some cases or process the shame. That could be another workshop or a PhD. I don't know. So that's one example. And I want us to be in the practice of, how is this community centered? How is it not? How is my outreach community centered? How is it not? Out in these streets, in some parts of the country, Indivisible has a reputation of being a little insular. Out in these streets, Indivisible has a reputation of getting shit done. Out in these streets, Indivisible has a reputation of being predominantly white. I don't know if that's necessarily, are these problems or are these challenges? Is it a reflection of how this country has redlined people? Is it a reflection of where you live, right? The ability and the practice of having the yes and thinking, not just the shame, not just the guilt, but processing and moving through it. And maybe having a cool song as part of the process. I want to do another example.
Every year, the Met Gala tells a story about who matters, who gets seen, who gets celebrated. This year, we decided to center us because culture does not come from the billionaires who profit and exploit our labor. Culture comes from the people, from the Lenape people who on this ground had a trading post, the working class meat packers who gave this place its name, from our LGBTQIA plus siblings who created community right here, from the hands that stitch the garments, the workers who move the packages, from the caregivers who hold communities together. And that's why we're here. Our job is to fight, to organize, to hope, and make sure that we do it with confidence and swag. Labor is art. We are art. So let's go get it.
Okay, so let's think about this one. How is this community centered? How is this not community centered? It's inclusive. Yeah. They're inclusive, LGBTQIA. They're inclusive of class, garment workers, the Lenape people, the land in which I stand. The language, we. They're stating who's included too. Yeah. Not inclusive to the unfashionable. Very good. I was going to ask. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. I appreciate that. I was going to ask the ability to make sure you put something on the other part of the ledger. How is this not community centered? Maybe they didn't have ASL. It certainly doesn't include the blind to some degree, right? And it's not about perfection. Again, being inclusive and generating a sense of belonging and naming those that have been historically marginalized and centering them. Those are all different streams of work and awareness. And this is why it comes from true inclusive teams of people that are able to achieve it at that level. I can't tell you how much labor went into this. The Action Lab is my parent organization, and the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that went into this event is a lot, because you're going against the current, the default of whiteness, the default of eugenics, of able-bodied, the default of patriarchy, the default of white supremacy. You are working against the current, but you are aligning yourself with your values. And that work is on all of us. So again, the ability to think, how is this community centered? How is it not? And what is within my realm of power to address it? And maybe the gap in a particular endeavor or project that you're on, you could name it's missing this, this, and this. That doesn't mean that you don't keep going. That doesn't mean that you stop doing the thing. You name it, you think about it, and you prioritize the challenges. I think I have a third example. Y'all ready for the third one?
Hola, me llamo Cereza y soy parte del Centro de Defensa Comunitaria de Lucha Anaheim. It started when Andalon and other organizations in LA started sharing trainings and toolkits to adopt a corner or to start your own community defense hub, where we basically post up in vulnerable locations. And so we decided to come to this Home Depot because this Home Depot has been targeted 6 times since June 19th, the last time being August 16th, when they took 3 of our compañeros, 3 of our jornaleros. So we are here to witness and document and to also connect the families from those who have been taken.
What would you tell somebody who wants to help but feels scared to show up?
I would invite you to drop off some water, drop off some coffee, drop off a pizza. Check in with yourself and your capacity, but learn how to better support the families that are actively going through it, because I think there's a lot less people worried about the aftermath, and that's the hardest part of it all. How do you talk to them, after their loved one has been taken away violently? Like, there's no training for that. There's no toolkit for that. And it's something that we have to do. So speak up, because that's how we are normalizing it, by not speaking up, by going about our day and pretending like everything's fucking fine when it's not. When our community is suffering, when our families are separated and community members are being killed inside the detention center. And we're not okay with that. And we're not going to normalize that. And that's why we're out here.
How about this one? How is this one community centered? How is this not community centered?
I got my coffee. Give me some books.
Multiple languages. Offering to bring it all in. Showing vulnerability and strength. We're making a choice. Endelon, wonderful organization. Their Adopt a Corner program, where you meet with day laborers and you build relationship with day laborers. If you happen to be in an environment in which that proximity is there. It's not easy to buy bulk coffee and donuts and be like, hey, I brought some donuts. And then have a conversation about how you holding up. I'm here to show up. My contribution is to let you know who I am, let you know that I'm part of Indivisible. And let's just have a conversation. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's like, hey, let's get you into a network. In my community, we need some landscaping. Is that something you're interested in? Right? Some people may not welcome it. But if you're operating from a place of where I want to show up and how I want to learn to engage, and this is why being part of collectives is so helpful, because let's say that you feel some type of way or somebody gives you some feedback you're not sure of, being part of your crew is to talk to one another about what's happening there, what was hard, what was easy, and processing that together. How can you act differently next time? Oh, they really didn't respond to you at all. Maybe you're not doing anything wrong. Maybe they need to see you show up a couple times, right? Like, so those kinds of details require that resiliency, that dedication, and that clarity about the why you're doing something. When we talk about how is something community-centered or not community-centered, we could also just be explicit. We are centering the immigrant day laborer community with this particular project. So by default, you will be excluding other groups. Well, what about trans people? What about this? Yes, I am so grateful you're naming that. This particular project is centering this. I'm so glad you're interested in that. Do you want to see what we're doing so you could replicate and serve and center that community? How are we building simultaneously? This is a big country. You are all over the country. How do you build more capacity, more relationship, more support for the communities that you're trying to expand to? Well, acknowledging that it may be excluding others, but not letting guilt or shame stop you from doing the work in front of you. So I hope these examples were helpful as we ground ourselves in the challenge of what does it mean to build across difference? What does it mean to do outreach that's community-centered? Can I ask somebody to read what's on the screen?
Community.
I'll read it.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Community-centered outreach design and community organizing is a framework that directly integrates local residents into every phase of the planning process. Instead of an organization dictating what a neighborhood needs, this approach positions community members as co-designers, shifting power to people who hold the lived experience and cultural knowledge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the way of seeing power. So the idea of being community-centered is like you go out, you ask the community, you build what the task is based on informing about each other. What is it that you want, right? But the core of it is, where do you think power comes from? Where do you think power lives? From a very young age, I don't know if you're familiar with the school to prison pipeline, the idea of how power works. Well, this person's the president. This person's the boss. If you've done union organizing, it could be quite the thing to put on a union butt. When you stand up to power in the default power structure that is hierarchical, that is the way that we are conditioned and in the practice of seeing power. When you're doing community-centered outreach and design, what you believe matters, what you're willing to interrogate matters. So we offer to you that true power comes from the people. We believe in people power. So people power means that you understand that us as a collective, as a community, is where true power comes from. This pedophile president wouldn't be able to do what he's doing if it wasn't for a Republican apparatus and nonprofit structure that is supporting, seeding, and feeding him and going with the flow. And so we must be salmon. When you think about community-centered outreach design, I want you to interrogate what your view of power is. Is it power with? Is it power over? And this is a much deeper thing than I can do in the time that remains. But I hope that you're seeing, like, what is it that you're feeling? What's coming up for you? And that you dig a little bit more. And you help each other dig through it. As we think about the core principles of community-centered outreach design, you want to be centered in co-creation. Organizers and community members build initiatives together. It's not doing it for the community or to the community. It's with the community, because of the community. It's asset-based, right? The focus centers on building up the community's existing strength. There's probably already social networks and cultural assets that you can leverage. It's like, oh, I'm in solidarity with immigrants. I'm going to start an immigrant rights group. Well, maybe there already is one. The due diligence of this. An example. There is a group that does organizing around reproductive justice. And another group comes in and it's like, well, I'm going to do it. And then now you're in competition having the same tasks rather than building collaboratively. We are an example of collaboration now. Indivisible is building strength by building leadership to indivisible people, folks that identify as indivisible. Under this fascist regime, Solidarity Organizing Initiative is like, yeah, we're doing that too. And we can cross-pollinate. You can sign the Solidarity Pledge, and maybe if it works out for you on a Thursday, to come to our virtual gathering, great. And if it doesn't, Indivisible got you covered. Because what we're doing here is building movement, and whether we call it Indivisible or Movement 5051 or Solidarity Organizing Pledgers and Supporters, we're aiming towards building a true thing. And we want to be equitable about the power dynamics. We view each other as essential experts in our own lives. We don't dismiss people because of what we can see or understand their identities to be. And we also don't have a bias where we over elevate them, but we understand that there is an equal power dynamic in our lived experience. And that is easy to say and harder to do. So the outreach design process is learning and listening, deeply immersing in the neighborhood to understand its history, its strengths, its pressing needs, identifying what the impacts, determine exactly who will be affected by the proposed campaign or program. Co-designing solutions, actively collaborating with community members to plan the specific steps and messaging of outreach. And implementation and refinement, executing the outreach plans while continuously collecting feedback to adapt as the community's needs evolve. Is this fast work or slow work? It can be slow. Molasses slow.
Let's try this.
Yeah. But if you're able to build trust quickly, maybe we could speed it up. Maybe we can be corn syrup fast. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you. Carry.
One example of how you quickly kind of cut through that is what the Solidarity Organizing Initiative is doing, which is we're asking folks to do solidarity suppers. Those could be a couple folks that you're connected with to start. And these solidarity suppers take place wherever you are with whomever you decide to include. And they can be short and simple and integrated into whatever you're already gathered with loved ones and neighbors, or bigger if you're ambitious. Here's a QR code. We're going to drop a tiny link. And it's a toolkit. This Solidarity Supper for July, for example, we're asking folks to talk about temporary protected status. The toolkit has a couple of stories for you to read out loud together and chew together. So our collective spaces, as we consume the same material, as we hear the same stories, we're able to quickly build community around what it is that we're processing together. So a way to speed up a community-centered process is by building community as quickly as possible. So here's an offering. Read through the toolkit and decide if you're able to host a Solidarity Supper. And if not, it's okay. It's just yet another tool for you to continue to build. We also talked about, we said we would talk about strategic and accountable allyship. I got a clip for you. You ready for it?
Excuse me, Mr. X. Hi, I've read some of your speeches, and I honestly believe that a lot of what you have to say is true. And I'm a good person in spite of what my ancestors did. I wanted to ask you, what can a white person like myself, who isn't prejudiced, what can I do to help you and further your cause?
Nothing. My high school was a black ghetto in Roxbury, right here in Boston. I got my college education on the streets of Harlem.
So that's a clip from Malcolm X, the movie. And here we see someone ask, how can I contribute? What do you think she did next? Do you think she kept trying to find a way to contribute to the cause? Or do you think she gave up? And she was like, well, Malcolm X said nah, so. Yes, that was real. That really happened. He writes about it in his biography. Nevertheless, she persisted. I don't know her. I want to play the Mariah Carey clip. Sure. He was only one route. Yeah. Thanks, folks. Thanks for putting that in the chat. Yeah. So again, this is where your clarity of purpose, your vision for what we're trying to build, a true democracy, perhaps. Even when you meet someone or you reach out to someone who you admire, or who's quite the leader of a movement, and you are discouraged. If you have clarity of purpose, you are able to keep going. So strategic and accountable allyship. Let's give it a definition. This is multiple choice. It's a feel-good, heroic position for people with privilege. It's obtained via training exclusively. Must be done for people rather than with people. Or an important process of learning, reflecting, and taking action to center solidarity with a given community. Okay. Seeing lots of D's in the chat. ABC. At least it should be B. Right? If you are finding yourself being in a heroic position and because you have a lot of privilege and just feeling good, then you're missing a big part of strategic and accountable allyship. That's not allyship, that's charity. If you're just going to training after training and not taking action, you have a block and you're just comfortable. If you're doing things for people, then you're tokenizing people. So the answer is D. And part of that is, again, our ability to self-reflect, not navel gaze, but self-reflect and lean into discomfort, right? Your comfort zone, you feel safe and in control. Your fear zone, you find excuses, you lack confidence. Your learning zone, you're dealing with challenges and problems. You're acquiring new skills. You're kind of stretching. Your growth zone is you're living your dreams. You're marking your milestones. You're seeing what you build. You're mentoring others on how to do this. You're not only growing yourself, you're growing your community. And it does require self-reflection. And it is a delicate balance between self-reflection and self-infatuation.
Well, Jessica, police are still trying to get this woman down from the statue.
Okay. Next, we're thinking about strategic and accountable allyship. Forgive my click reveal is out of order, but we're going to watch another example. And then the questions we're going to ask is, how is this strategic ally? Like, how is this allyship? What was missing from this allyship? So let's watch the short video, and then we'll have our questions.
Well, Jessica, police are still trying to get this woman down from the statue. Take a look behind me right now about what's going on behind me. They're trying to reach her with a ladder that's leaning against the statue's edge. We've seen emergency responders handing the woman water, seeming to talk to her. Helicopters are monitoring what the situation from above. Now, you can imagine how many tourists came here today to see the Statue of Liberty up close on the 4th of July. And they saw a lot more than anyone could have expected. Tourists took cell phone videos of pictures of this woman climbing up the statue's base starting around 3:30 p.m. One family told us they were on Liberty Island trying to listen to their tour guide when they noticed a woman making her way up Lady Liberty's foot. The father alerted park authorities, who quickly rushed below the trespasser and surrounded her on the ground. Emergency helicopters have been circled around the statue. All the tours have stopped and people were told to board their own tour boats and come back to land, as police, Coast Guard, and rangers have been trying to get this trespasser down.
I was like, is that a person hanging from the statue? And I was like, took my camera, I zoomed in, I'm like, oh my God, there's someone there.
It seemed very dangerous. We were really wondering, like, why? Like, what's the point?
I think he tried to climb higher, and the police spotted him, so he was like hiding out. So the helicopter came and but basically was trying to look at him, and then he went to the other side, and then he got like 2 helicopters and then 3 helicopters. The whole island's shut down.
And this actually was not the statue's first trespasser today. Earlier this afternoon, at least 7 people were arrested for climbing the statue and hanging over a sign that read a message about ICE. Now, taking a live look back now, you can see the boat still surrounding Statue of Liberty. People have been coming back on their tour boats, just astounded by what they saw. Less so afraid, more astounded by just how this could happen here today. We're live in Lower Manhattan. Allie Bauman, CBS 2 News.
Allie, thank you.
So it's happening here, and not how the newscaster framed it. This was a protest where Rise and Resist, which is an organization that is worth your attention, and I'm grateful for their space in the movement, where one of the Rise and Resist members climbed the Statue of Liberty and occupied it for X amount of hours. And then you also see Rise and Resist collective team have shirts that spell out abolish ICE. This news channel, and like most news channels, they are not centering the fact that this was an act of protest in their narrative. But I want you to think about, when we think about strategic allyship, how was this allyship? And this is from 2016. What is missing from this action? How is allyship missing? And what was strategic about it? Or what was not strategic about it?
Okay.
Disruptive business as usual. Got into the mainstream media. We see allyship here with Rise and Resist centering the fact that children were being separated from their families, that abolish ICE is the ask. We see what's missing from this allyship is that not everyone climbed that. And it was a Black woman that was stuck, that was on that Statue of Liberty for many hours, while the remaining activists were not. And what's strategic about this, I think, is debatable. The media clip doesn't frame it as the act of resistance that it is. It frames it as, this lady was stuck. One of the bystanders talks about it as though it was a man. There's no mention of Rise and Resist. This was a blip in the news for what purpose? So it's a disconnected message where one person is isolated. Now, there wasn't an absence of planning. As you dig deeper into this particular incident, you can learn more about what the dynamics are within the group, which I encourage you to do if you're curious. But that's part of movement building. That is part of our collective action. If you're maybe doing a banner drop, or maybe you're deciding to do nonviolent direct action. The group dynamics matter. How we think about allyship matters. How it may be successful, how it may fail, needs to be part of our process. So we want to think about some of the pitfalls of allyship. What are some potential traps? Unanchored care. So unanchored care, maybe we're planning to do an action, but we don't have any plan for the aftercare, for the possible emotional impact, psychological impact. We're asking people to take risk without planning for the aftermath. Having done lots of Know Your Rights trainings, it is not unoften that people say, hey, well, what about afterwards? After people are kidnapped, what are we doing for the community? And that's a really potent question. What are we going to do after the impact? Are we thinking about the full spectrum of care necessary? Who's going to, if someone is arrested, who's going to show up? What's the plan? When we think about performative solidarity, how many of us had pink hats? Now, I personally think performative solidarity, symbolic activism has a place and is important and necessary. One of the key Critiques of the No Kings March. It's like, yes, and like, what else are you doing? The critiques of that's not enough. There's some validity to that, but that doesn't take away the value. If it was people that just started knitting that are joining this, I'm not going to yuck their yum. If this was your first step into activism, then it's not performative. It's important. It's pivotal. What makes something performative is, are you thinking about the impact, the outcome, the value? And there's a balance and a tension between what it means for you and what it does for the collective and for the movement. And it's not about getting it perfect. There'll be some that'll have their criticisms and there'll be some that'll celebrate it. But again, this goes back to the previous point of understanding that sober duality. This is how it's functioning. This is how it's failing. How do we keep going? What else? What are some other pitfalls of allyship? Some things that we should keep in mind, or blind spots. The goals may stray. Sustaining it. What's the Women's March doing now? Unknown outcomes. And by the way, they're doing a lot, but I don't know. So I want to drop something else for you. This, you might not be part of the nonprofit industrial complex. You are part of a group of people that are deciding to do something in response to this authoritarian takeover. And you can correct me if I'm wrong in the evaluation. Building resilient organizations is a deep cut. It's a deep read. It's a long form article that has broken my brain for the better. And the one key thing one of the things that I keep coming back to in doing this work from that article is this concept about being in right relationship with one another. This concept of we need to be honest with one another and have a clarity in our analysis, our power analysis, and a clarity in our goals and what we're trying to achieve. And that clarity needs to be served by being in right relationship to one another. I can be in this room and I can tell you, I love you. I love you. I love you because you have humanity that I respect, and you are someone that is choosing to spend your time doing this. So me offering my love to you has the clarity and the soberness of what we are trying to achieve, of recognizing each other's humanity. This long form article about building resilient organizations does an excellent analysis of what are the pitfalls of our movement, of our nonprofits, and what is the counter thought to that. So I encourage you to do a deep read. Take what's useful. And I want you to think about allyship as a bridge to solidarity. I want you to use the tool of yes and. Can someone read this quote?
If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together.
Fantastic. I could not have asked for a better voice actor. Thank you. When we think about allyship, it's important to recognize a spectrum of privilege. Maybe it's class, maybe it's race, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's cisness. But we can hold what allyship is while also understand that solidarity is what the movement also calls for. That we are also oppressed by white supremacy, that we are also oppressed by patriarchy. And that we also have the task of liberating ourselves from it. So how are solidarity and allyship different? And because I'm doing a time check, I'm going to move through this a little bit quicker. But these are things I want you to sit with. And when we go do our lab, we'll spend some more time with it. How are solidarity and allyship similar? And how do they complement each other? And how do you embody them in your work and what you choose to do and how you show up every day in your life? One thing that has been standing or bubbling up for me is children's rights. As I think about how children have to represent themselves in court. As I think about children who don't have their parents with them anymore, or have to be deported alongside their parents. Where's my allyship to them? Where's my solidarity with them? And it's not about having an answer quickly, it's about reflecting and choosing intentionally. There were some other sections that we said we would cover, so I'm going to go through them quickly, and I appreciate you giving me the grace to do so. So if allyship is a bridge to solidarity, solidarity requires an understanding of generating belonging. When we started our time together, I asked you to think about an example of when somebody made you feel like you belong. But it has key features. People are respected. People's identity, experience, and boundaries are honored, not managed or placated, right? Is there a practice of celebration and a process for conflict in your groups? Because conflict is an opportunity for growth. Disagreement is an opportunity for growth. Are people reflected? People see themselves genuinely represented in who's leading, who's speaking, and how the work's framed, not just invited in after the fact. I'm a Mexican American. I'm in New York. I feel myself represented by Mamdani. It is not the sameness in our culture. It's the sameness in value that allows me to see myself in that leadership. So it's yes, and there's race. Yes, and there's class. Yes, and there's social consciousness. Do folks see themselves in who's leading? It's not about quotas. It's not about meeting a particular quota. It's about true leadership, true values alignment. And are people expected? People's needs, presence, and contributions are anticipated and planned for in advance, not treated as an accommodation or as a surprise. So are folks planned for in your gatherings as indivisibles, or are you working around folks? And that indicates to you how you're generating a sense of belonging, which allows you to create a sense of community, which allows you to stand in solidarity. So trust and relationship building. Relationships can be built by a variety of factors or practices. Consistency over intensity. I will name that I struggle with that. I have more intensity than consistency. Listening more than you speak. I probably think I'm good at this. I could probably work on this one too. Reciprocity, not extraction. I pride myself in being good at this one. Follow through after the task, 50-50. Transparency about what you can't promise, that's a skill. Repair, not avoidance. I'm enjoying and crying learning this one. And patience with a timeline. These are the elements of building trust and nurturing our relationships. And our lab will talk a little bit more about which ones are you good at? Which ones are you bad at? How do you get better at them? Values-centered leadership, right? I want you to think about a leader that you trusted. What did they do? Not say, that showed you what they actually valued. And again, I'm going to go in the negative example.
Would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is Peter Thiel. He's a leader. What values are we seeing there? So the long road to true democracy is our ability to reflect. What do we owe each other when it comes to developing our own leadership? There was a scene cut from the Malcolm X movie that's also from his biography, and I'm going to share that with you now.
Mr. X, I have a good heart. I'm a good person despite my whiteness. What can the good white people like myself who are not prejudiced do to help the cause of the Negro?
Well, what's your name?
Franny.
Franny, I learned the hard way that racism starts at home, in one's own community. So I would suggest that if you want to help the Negro, you get together with other people that think the way you do, that are sincere like I know you are, and you fight the battle against racism right where it starts, in your own home and in your own community.
I will, Mr. X. I will.
And pray.
It didn't make the cut, but Malcolm X talks about this in his biography. And we all grow in our perspective of what our wants, needs, and leadership should look like. I'll tell you what my leadership looks like. It's a little bit about begging. Reach out to 5 people and tell them what you learned here today and ask them to sign the Solidarity Pledge. That's my ask. And we'll drop the link to the pledge in the chat, and it'll also be in the follow-up email. It would mean the world to me if you talked about what your experience was today and shared it with 5 people. And if you feel like stretching your discomfort zone into that, leaning into discomfort, 5 people you haven't talked to in 3 months. Say like, hey, it's been a minute. I want to tell you about this training I went to. And finally, was this a good use of your time? Would you have preferred that this be an email? One of my nightmares is that this could have been an email. So thank you all so much for participating, for thinking, for challenging yourself, for choosing to be here. I'm so grateful to have been a guest here with Indivisible, and grateful to each and every one of you. I'm just going to go pass it back to Kimberly.